Is everything permissible in talk shows for the sake of entertainment? When Jimmy Fallon described Denzel Washington's new film as standard, Washington's response captivated millions of viewers and created a storm on social media. Hey everyone! Before you start watching the video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get into our story. The studio of The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon was lively and energetic that evening as usual. Colorful lights, live music, and an excited audience created the characteristic atmosphere of the popular talk show. Jimmy Fallon took to the stage with his typical energetic and cheerful demeanor, greeted the viewers, and announced the special guest of the night. Joining us tonight, one of Hollywood's most respected actors, two-time Oscar winner, with his new film, The Equalizer 3, Denzel Washington. The camera turned to the entrance at the side of the room, and Denzel Washington stepped onto the stage in a perfectly tailored dark suit. Walking with his characteristic charismatic and confident manner, the studio audience stood up and applauded him enthusiastically. Washington approached Fallon with a smile. The two men shook hands and hugged, and then he sat down in the guest chair. The first few minutes of the conversation passed in a positive atmosphere. Fallon and Washington talked about recent developments in Hollywood, Washington's family, and memories with fans. Denzel was elegant as always, giving thoughtful and sincere answers to questions. The audience listened attentively to his every sentence. His stage presence captured everyone's attention in the studio. Fallon asked about Washington's recent projects. "You've been doing theater recently too, right?" he asked. Washington nodded. "Yes, I was in The Iceman Cometh on Broadway. Theater has always been a special place for me. It's very different from acting in front of a camera, but that instant interaction, that connection with the audience, it's unlike anything else." "What do you think is the difference between theater and film?" Fallon asked. Washington responded thoughtfully. "In theater, you only have one chance in that moment. Every night is a different performance, a different experience. In film, you have multiple chances to capture the perfect moment, but ultimately, that moment is recorded and stays that way forever." Fallon nodded, seeming genuinely impressed. "Are there still aspects of acting that are challenging for an experienced actor like you?" "Every role brings its own challenges," said Washington. "The secret is to embrace those challenges, not to be afraid of them. There's something to learn from every character, from every story." 15 minutes into the conversation, Fallon began to talk about the new film. The Equalizer 3 was being eagerly anticipated as Washington's latest film. "I watched the film, Denzel. It's really impressive," Fallon said with a smile. "You've delivered another great performance." Washington bowed his head modestly. "Thank you, Jimmy. I worked with a great team. The director, cameraman, other actors, they were all extraordinary," Fallon continued, nodding. "But watching it I was thinking, this film is a bit, how should I say, like a standard Denzel Washington film, isn't it? I mean, again you're playing a character who beats up the bad guys, delivers justice, saves everyone." There was a sudden silence in the studio. Fallon's comment had started as a compliment but then unexpectedly turned into a dismissive tone. A few people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. The smile on Washington's face slightly faded, his eyes sharpened. But he managed to stay calm. He sat up slightly in the guest chair. "Standard," Washington repeated, his voice calm but authoritative. "Interesting choice of word." Fallon, as if realizing his mistake, immediately tried to recover. "I mean your classic style. Great action sequences, a deep character." Washington slightly raised his hand, politely cutting off Fallon. "Jimmy, can I ask you something?" he said, fixing his eyes directly on Fallon's. Fallon, looking a bit confused, said, "Sure, ask." "What part of my film do you think is standard?" Washington asked. "I'm curious because to make such a comment about a film, you really need to understand that film, to deeply grasp its nuances, the character development, the story being told." There was another silence in the studio. The expression on Fallon's face reflected the panic of someone who realized a joke had been misunderstood. No, there's been a misunderstanding," said Fallon, raising his hands defensively. I mean you usually play strong, charismatic characters, which is a great thing." "I see," said Washington. His voice now had a slightly instructional tone. "But Jimmy, every film, every character is unique. When I played Alonzo Harris in Training Day, that character was a man who distorted justice, abused it. In Flight, I played an alcoholic pilot. In Fences, I portrayed a man who harmed his own family, who never realized his own potential. Fallon was nodding, but with each word from Washington, he seemed to shrink a bit more. With every role, every character, I try to explore a different aspect of the human condition, Washington continued. And if you see this as standard, perhaps you need to look at films a bit more deeply. A few, "oh" sounds rose from the audience. This was clearly a criticism, but Washington had done it in such an elegant way that it came across as instructive, not aggressive. Sweat had gathered on Fallon's forehead. "You're right, Denzel. Absolutely right. It was a poor choice of words." Washington smiled, this time more sincerely. "That's okay, Jimmy. But I want to tell you and the viewers something. In media, especially on television and social media, it has become too easy to belittle people's work, art, and passion. We use words like standard, ordinary, typical, and unknowingly simplify others' efforts." Everyone in the studio was listening attentively to Washington. At that moment, the person dominating the stage was definitely Denzel Washington, not Fallon. Every film, every performance, every work of art is a part of its creator's heart, said Washington, now addressing the entire studio. And before labeling them as standard, perhaps we should think a bit more, be a bit more understanding. These words received great applause from the studio. People appreciated Washington's elegance and wisdom. Fallon looked relieved but also a bit embarrassed. "Denzel, I really am sorry," said Fallon, this time more sincerely. "I was wrong, and you've definitely pointed out something important. We need to be more respectful of artists' work." Washington nodded. "Thank you, Jimmy. We all make mistakes. What's important is learning from them." The studio filled with applause again. The tense atmosphere had been replaced by a relieved one. But Washington wasn't finished with what he had to say. "I want to add one more thing," he said, now turning his gaze to the cameras. "To everyone watching us at home, art, especially film art, isn't just entertainment. Yes, it makes us laugh, excites us, scares us. But it also teaches us lessons about life, offers different perspectives, helps us better understand the world." Washington paused briefly, allowing his words to gain weight. "In every film, I strive to give something to the viewer. An emotion, a thought, an awareness. And I can't accept this being described as standard. Because every story is a story worth telling. Every character is a soul worth exploring." The applause in the studio rose again, this time stronger and longer. Most of the audience had stood up. Even Fallon was applauding Washington, with a genuine expression of respect on his face. Fallon, trying to get the program back on track, asked, "Shall we show a scene from the film now?" "With pleasure," said Washington. "And let the viewers see for themselves whether it's standard or not." As he said the last sentence, there was a slight smile on his face. Not threatening, but his message was clear. Respecting effort was important, and this was a lesson not to be forgotten. After the scene was shown, there was great applause in the studio. The scene from the film showed Washington portraying a character different from those he had played before, with more complex and emotional aspects. When the applause died down, Fallon said, "That scene was definitely incredible, Denzel," this time with genuine admiration. "That inner conflict of the character, in your looks, in your posture, truly impressive." Washington bowed his head modestly. "Thank you. This character is special to me. Because he is a man who fights not only with external evil but also with his own demons. And I think all of us at some point have to face our own inner darkness." Fallon nodded. "This shows that the film isn't just an action movie, doesn't it? It has a deeper layer." "Absolutely," said Washington. "As any good story should. On the surface, there's excitement and action, but when you dig a little, you find deeper questions and thoughts about the human soul." The conversation was now proceeding in a more respectful and profound tone. Fallon was genuinely trying to understand Washington's perspective, to explore the nuances of his film. When the program ended, the two men stood up and shook hands. Fallon bowed to Washington and whispered something. The cameras were no longer recording, but lip-reading experts later determined that Fallon had said, "I'm really sorry and thank you." Washington nodded with his usual grace and left the studio. After that episode of The Tonight Show aired, this encounter between Denzel Washington and Jimmy Fallon went viral on social media. The hashtags #DenzelTeachesRespect and #FallonSchooled trended on Twitter. The video clip was viewed and shared millions of times. People appreciated Washington's elegance, calmness, and at the same time, his unwavering principles. Denzel Washington is not only a great actor but also an extraordinary human being. The lesson he gave to Jimmy Fallon is for all of us, wrote the Twitter user. Famous film critic Roger Ebert wrote, Washington's response to Fallon could be one of the best performances of the year, full of grace, authority, and wisdom. The Hollywood Reporter published an analysis titled, Washington Gave Fallon a Lesson in Media Ethics. The article emphasized the importance of Washington's message for the media world. Denzel Washington didn't just promote a film in the talk show studio, he also delivered a powerful message to the entire media world. Art and artists deserve respect. And this message came at a time when it needed to be heard, the analysis stated. Variety magazine described Washington's response as the media moment of the year. The lesson Washington gave to Fallon will go down as one of the most elegant and effective rebuttals in talk show history, they wrote. The day after the incident, Jimmy Fallon issued a formal apology at the opening of his program. I want to apologize for the comment I made to Denzel Washington last night, he said, looking at the camera. I spoke thoughtlessly and belittled his extraordinary career and art. Denzel, thank you for your grace and understanding. Fallon continued, this time in a more thoughtful tone. This incident has been an important lesson for me and hopefully for the entire media world. Sometimes we can cross boundaries for the sake of entertainment. Sometimes we don't show the respect that artists' work deserves. But Denzel was right. Every film, every performance, every work of art is a part of its creator's heart. And it's our responsibility to respect them, to try to understand them. This statement was well received by viewers. Fallon's acknowledgement of his mistake and his genuine self-criticism were appreciated. Meanwhile, Washington's film, The Equalizer 3, was breaking records at the box office. Film critics particularly praised Washington's performance. The New York Times wrote, Washington proves once again why he is one of the greatest actors of his generation. Every scene, every look, every word is calculated and perfect. The film made $65 million in its opening weekend, making it one of the most successful openings in Washington's career. Many analysts attributed this extraordinary success partly to the respect Washington gained in the incident with Fallon. People appreciate Washington's respect and passion for his art and career, wrote a film analyst. The incident with Fallon showed that Washington is a principled and respectable person not just in front of the camera, but in real life as well. And this increased viewers' interest in his films. A week after the Fallon incident, Denzel Washington was a guest on Oprah Winfrey's program. Oprah, inevitably, asked about the incident with Fallon. Jimmy is a good kid, said Washington, with his usual generosity. He chose an inappropriate word for that moment, that's all. We all make mistakes. What's important is how we learn from those mistakes. Oprah said, but your response at that moment was so powerful. How did you manage to stay calm? Washington smiled thoughtfully. You know, Oprah, as you get older, you learn some things. True power is not in shouting, but in being able to stay calm. True authority is not in losing yourself, but in being able to remain respectful even while protecting your principles. But many people would have gotten angry in that situation, said Oprah. Anger is usually a sign of weakness, Washington replied. Anger emerges when we lose control. But true power is being able to maintain control even in the most challenging situations. Washington continued, and I also want to say this, I have no resentment towards Jimmy. He was just doing his job, trying to be entertaining. Sometimes this effort can hurt others' feelings. But his intention wasn't bad. And after that incident, he called me, apologized, and I accepted. Oprah asked, do you think this incident will create a change in the media? Washington nodded thoughtfully. I hope so. But real change doesn't come from an event or a person. Real change begins when all of us choose to be a little more thoughtful, a little more respectful, a little more humane in every encounter, every day. These words started a new viral wave. The hashtag #DenzelWisdom received millions of shares on social media. People quoted Washington's wisdom and elegance, sharing how they applied it to their lives. Denzel Washington's words should be a guide not just for the media, but for all of us. Respect, understanding, and grace, these values will never go out of style, wrote one user. A month after the Fallon incident, a group of academics working on media ethics published an article titled, "The Power of Respect, the Denzel Washington Example." The article examined how Washington's response to Fallon could be used as a case study in terms of media ethics. Washington's response was not just a personal defense, but also an important lesson in terms of media ethics, the article stated. With his stance against the simplification and belittlement of art and artists, he delivered a powerful message to the entire media world. Columbia University's Faculty of Communication added a course called Respect and Ethics in Media to its curriculum. In the first week of the course, students were shown the video of the Washington-Fallon confrontation. The professor teaching the course said, "This case study perfectly exemplifies the fundamental principles of media ethics." Washington's attitude shows how effective it can be to defend values like respect, honesty, and human dignity. Harvard University's Faculty of Communication also opened a similar course, Ethical Debates in Popular Culture, the Washington-Fallon Case. This course attracted great interest among media students. Academics examined Washington's response from three perspectives: rhetorical, ethical, and performative. The persuasive power in Washington's words, his ethical stance, and his stage presence were analyzed in detail. Washington didn't just defend himself and his art for that moment. He spoke on behalf of all artists, said an academic. His words started a new discussion on media ethics and respect. Fallon's program took on a more thoughtful and respectful tone after the incident. Instead of belittling guests' works and careers, the focus shifted to in-depth conversations and genuine understanding. This change in the format of the program was noticed and appreciated by viewers as well. Ratings began to rise. Positive comments increased on social media. The Tonight Show has now become one of the most thoughtful and respectful talk shows on television, wrote a television critic. And this change began after the lesson Denzel Washington gave to Fallon. Other talk show hosts noticed this change as well. Stephen Colbert mentioned something he called the Denzel effect on his own program. Washington reminded all media of the importance of respect, understanding, and depth, he said. Jimmy Kimmel also made a similar statement. Denzel Washington gave a lesson to all talk show hosts, he said on his program. And it was time to take this lesson. Kimmel also made similar changes to his own program. He focused on having more respectful and in-depth conversations with his guests, on better understanding their works and careers. This change spread to other talk show programs as well. Hosts like Seth Meyers, James Corden, and Trevor Noah also began to adopt similar approaches. A renaissance is happening in talk shows, wrote a television critic. Instead of cheap jokes and superficial conversations, we're seeing a more thoughtful, more respectful, and deeper approach. And the architect of this change is Denzel Washington. Perhaps the greatest legacy of the Washington-Fallon incident was the change it created in the tone and approach of the media. Talk shows became more respectful, more in-depth, and more thoughtful. More respect began to be shown to artists' works and careers, and simple labels and generalizations were avoided. And all of this began with the calm but resolute stance of an actor in a television studio, in front of millions of viewers. Denzel Washington had not only given a lesson to Jimmy Fallon but had reminded all media and viewers of the importance of respect, honesty, and consistency. This went down in history as one of the most elegant and effective moments in media history. And perhaps most importantly, this lesson was given not by shouting, getting angry, or belittling, but in a calm, thoughtful, and elegant manner. Because as Denzel Washington said, true power is not in shouting, but in being able to stay calm. True authority is not in losing yourself, but in being able to remain respectful even while protecting your principles. 5 years after the Fallon incident, an academic summarized the impact of Washington's words that night. Washington's words were not just a talk show moment, but a cultural turning point. He gave an important lesson to the media world about how artists and art should be treated. And this lesson continues to resonate years later. Washington's film, The Equalizer 3, made $400 million worldwide, becoming one of the most successful films in his career. Film critics particularly praised his performance, and many noted that their respect for Washington increased even more after the Fallon incident. Washington is an impressive figure not just on screen, but in real life as well, wrote a critic. His lesson to Fallon showed his passion and respect for his art and career. And this affected our perspective on his films as well. When the Oscar season arrived, Washington was nominated for Best Actor for his performance in The Equalizer 3. This was his 9th Oscar nomination. The Oscar ceremony was magnificently held at the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles. Walking on the red carpet, Washington answered journalists' questions with his usual elegance. A reporter inevitably asked about the incident with Fallon. "Do you think the lesson you gave that night started a change in the media world?" Washington smiled modestly. "I was just being honest. I defended my art and career. If this contributed to a change in the media world, I can only be happy about that." When the Oscar ceremony began, the host of the night paid a special tribute while introducing Washington. "Tonight among us, we have not just an extraordinary actor, but also a figure who reminded the media world of the importance of respect and honesty. Denzel Washington inspires us not just with his films, but with his stance in real life." These words caused great applause in the hall. When the camera turned to Washington, he was seen bowing his head modestly. Washington didn't win the Oscar that night, but he was one of the most talked about figures of the ceremony. On social media, the hashtag Denzel deserved it trended, with many people arguing that he should have won. But Washington, with his usual elegance, said in his statement to the press, "The Oscar is not a competition. Each nominee delivered an extraordinary performance, and they all deserve recognition." These words once again revealed his character. Washington was an exemplary figure not just in front of the camera, but in real life as well, with his humility, elegance, and principles. A year after the Fallon incident, Harvard University organized a symposium on respect and media ethics. This 3-day event brought together academics, journalists, and media professionals to discuss media ethics, respect, and the value of art. The opening speaker of the symposium was Denzel Washington. Washington spoke with his usual thoughtful and elegant manner in front of hundreds of participants. "Media doesn't just provide information and entertainment. It also shapes our values, attitudes, and worldview," he said. "Therefore, media professionals have a great responsibility to show respect to people and their work." Washington continued his speech, not directly mentioning the Fallon incident, but implying it. Sometimes, for the sake of entertainment, we tend to belittle others' effort, passion, and art. But we must remember that every work of art is a part of its creator's heart, and showing respect to it is not just a courtesy, but also an ethical obligation. Washington's speech at Harvard resonated widely in the media world. The video recording of his speech was viewed millions of times, and the hashtag respect in media went viral on social media. 5 years after the Fallon incident, The Tonight Show had become one of the most respectful and in-depth talk shows in its history. Jimmy Fallon sent a thank you message to Washington every anniversary. "The lesson you gave me 5 years ago changed not just my career, but my life," he said in his message. In the media world, there was now a term known as the Denzel effect. This meant treating a guest or topic in depth and with respect. This effect was felt in many areas, from talk show formats to journalism education. In the following years, Denzel Washington continued both his acting and directing careers. Each of his projects received great interest from critics and viewers. But perhaps his greatest legacy was the media revolution he started with his calm but resolute stance in a television studio. Washington had said in an interview, "Art nourishes our souls. And artists are the gardeners who provide this nourishment. Showing respect to them and their work is not just a courtesy, but also a necessity for the preservation of our culture and humanity." These words were like a summary of the lesson he gave to Fallon. And this lesson left a lasting mark on the media world. In conclusion, the event that began that night in the Tonight Show studio transcended being just a talk show moment and became a true cultural turning point. Denzel Washington's calm but resolute stance reminded the whole world of the value of art and the power of respect.